To be honest, I have little interest in watching giant robots smashing each other. Also, I quite enjoy a number of series in the mech genre. These two statements may seem to be contradictory, but what it really comes down to is context. Given the proper context, series centered around gigantic robot fights can be humorous, thought-provoking, or just plain ridiculous, and a lot of them are. Without it, you get something that's confusing as hell or an explosion fest. Today, a review of the mech manga Breakblade, and a look at whether the context behind the mech fights in this series make it worth the read. Breakblade is set on the continent of Cruzan, a desolate desert world occupied by the less than peaceful kingdoms of Athens, Orlando, Assam, and Krishna. Almost all the people in this world seem to be able to wield quartz using magic, to operate anything from farm equipment to giant quartz golems. This series named for Mecha. Our protagonist Rykard, however, cannot, giving us the classic everyone has blank ability but me character. A character trope only slightly less common than having our protagonist be the chosen one. Not to worry though, because right near the start of the story, an ancient golem of tremendous power is unearthed, and Rykard is the only one who can wield it, giving him just a bit of the chosen one vibe. The story then revolves around Rykard's involvement in the conflict between Athens and Krishna. And just to add to the drama, 3 of his former classmates and close friends just so happen to be the king and queen of Krishna, and a high-ranking officer in the Athenian army. This manga seems to have no shortage of characters with something broken inside them. We get the psychotic, the mentally unstable, the depressed, those who are suffering from past trauma, the suicidal, and you get the picture. Though not everyone's like that, it's still probably one of the grimmer casts I've encountered recently. Our main character, Rykard, starts out with a personality that alternates between lackadaisical smartass and mopey. Fighting in the war, however, seriously affects him, and he becomes much more serious and occasionally homicidal as the story goes on. He's not the most likable character in the world, but he feels very human, and because of that you can empathize with him. Next to him, the most important characters are probably his close friends and former classmates, Hodor, Sigyn, and Zes. Hodor is the king of Krishna, a mellow man who strongly feels the burden of his responsibility. He would have gladly surrendered his throne to prevent war if it would have not resulted in the death of all the royals, including his wife Sigyn. Sigyn is the mad scientist of the story, and was even called that at one point in the series. She's also one of the calmest and most compassionate characters I've ever seen, and scarcely fits into the mad scientist archetype. While technically she's married to Hodor, their relationship appears to be little more than platonic, and it's pretty obvious that she has feelings for Rykard. Hooray for infidelity drama! Anyways, lastly we have Zes, an officer in the Athenian army. While it's very clear that he does have a conscience and is a good man, demons from his past haunt him, and he sometimes makes some rather questionable decisions. The thing I probably appreciate most about this series is its nuanced approach to morality. Certainly there are a number of atrocities that are committed as the story progresses, but there is always a certain cold logic behind these acts, which makes it hard to dismiss them as simply being evil. The author also takes great pains to show the characters beyond their roles simply as soldiers, but also as caring friends, doting fathers, and loving daughters. As a result, you always feel some sadness when a character dies, and I would be very hesitant to label anyone as being a good guy or a bad guy, apart from possibly some of the politicians. Speaking of which, the series does a very good job providing the readers with all the background on political scheming and wrangling that goes up behind the fighting. This provides the aforementioned all-important context to make the mech fights interesting. Lastly, while the series doesn't reach the absurd code geass levels of genius insane tactics and strategies, strategy plays a large role in battles, and it's not just about seeing who can pull off the most badass stunts in a golem. Though, there still are a fair number of badass golem stunts. While the story doesn't have the highest death count for main characters that I've seen in a series, it's still probably one of the most unrelentingly bleak stories I've read. Moments where people appearing in the story aren't either angry, depressed, longing, or emotionless are few and far between. And half the time when someone's happy, it's because they just so happen to be sadistic. The remaining moments that contain some happiness tend to be either bittersweet or short-lived. It's not that this tone is inappropriate for a story because war is a grim business. But that being said, I think the author could have made the happy moments in this series extend just a bit longer. Another complaint I have about this story is the whole quartz magic thing. After it's introduced at the beginning, it never really gets discussed other than, hey, we can move golems because magic. The story will occasionally refer to someone as being a strong mage, but whether this means they actually have more magic power, hence making their golem stronger, or is just suggesting that they're a more skillful mech pilot is never really explained. You could probably remove all mention of magic from the story, and there would be absolutely no change to the plot, other than Rygart not being different from everyone else. Really, as far as I can tell, the only reason magic was introduced to the series was so that there was a semi-plausible reason for Rygart not to be able to use regular machines. My last complaint is with the art style. It works quite well most of the time except for battles. In the battles, there's often little distinction between the golems, and as a result, it can often be unclear as to who's on what side. It's not too big a deal if you only have two main characters fighting, but in larger battles, it can get downright confusing. Breakblade is definitely one of the more mature shonen series I've read, and hell, it's probably more mature than most of the seinen stuff I've read too. If you're looking for a serious story with a strong plot, it's great and probably worth a read. That being said, I think some people might find the little cloud of doom that seems to follow the story around to be just a bit on the trying side. This story isn't a Greek tragedy, but we sure as hell have two characters who blatantly are being set up to be tragic heroes, and I really wish the author wouldn't be quite so obvious about it. It really wouldn't hurt for this series to take a lighter tone on occasion. Anyways, if you've already read this story and are looking for something else to read, I have two suggestions. The first is Nausicaa Valley of the Wind, which has a lot of the same military and politics type stuff near its beginning, and also has a rather serious tone. Another possibility is Full Metal Panic, which is another pretty good mech series, although it should be noted it's completely different from Breakblade, with a rather large focus on slapstick humor at some points. Anyways, thanks for listening. If you liked this review, please subscribe and all comments are welcome. Cheers!